This podcast is rated S for spoilers. Listener discretion is advised. Don't forget to view our spoiler-free companion video on our Half Past Podcast channel on YouTube. Half Past Podcast. This is episode 44, the movie review of Legend of Tarzan. We will also be discussing.
Take two.
Take two? Do I have to do a take two?
No, just blow through it. Tarzan through it. Tarzan through it. Let's do it.
We will also be discussing the Jason Bourne trailer. I'm Graham Ricks, and here with me is my friend and co-pilot, Ian Jones.
So if I had Tarzan's body, I would walk around without a shirt anyway. I know it's hot in Africa. And I mean the country of Africa. Which is what 90%
do.
Right, yeah.
What movies always do. It's always like, well, they're in East Africa. It's like Africa's a continent.
Not a country, people. Africa is not a country, damn it.
It's terrible.
I think that should be like somewhere in the taught every year in this country, like the first thing. Day one. Yeah,
it's pretty amazing how often that happens in movies. It's like, God, there's so many countries in Africa. You guys can't even... The thing that's interesting is recently, really the only one that we have seen that actually mentions a country is Captain America Civil War when they say Wakanda. Which isn't even a real country.
Yeah,
but at least they know that it's located in
I didn't
Africa.
know it wasn't real until you told me the last podcast, so...
Oh, that's terrible. It's okay. It's okay. We're true Americans.
It's just, who cares? It's like, well, there's Africa and South Africa. Right? There's the white one and then the other.
That's terrible.
That is terrible, I know. But I mean, that's sort of the whole thing.
I know, right?
I don't know. That kind of rolls into the movie anyway because of how the plot goes. So maybe we should stop right there because I was going to talk about some of the geopolitical stuff that's going on in a Tarzan movie.
All right. So I guess we'll go ahead and get into Jason Bourne then. So did you get this trailer here?
Yes. Well, it's the same one too.
Yes, it's the same trailer. So it's. I haven't seen any other trailers. It's been the same one.
And the movie comes out soon.
Yeah, right? Usually you get like a teaser and then like a theatrical one and then maybe a third one that happens every once in a while. But, I mean, I don't have much to say about this one other than the fact that it looks like a kick-ass Bourne movie. It just looks kind of fun. That's pretty much all I have to say about it.
I'm just not sure. I kind of think that they've gone to the well too many times.
Oh, I'm sure they have.
I like the idea of... I really like the one with Alex Cross in it. So... Is that right? Was that his name?
Alex Cross is a totally different...
No, it is. What was... You're right. That is a completely different thing.
Yes.
What was Jeremy Renner's name?
Well, I haven't seen Bourne Legacy.
Okay, you know what? This is really bad. This is sucking here.
The thing is I haven't seen Bourne Ultimatum or Bourne Legacy. I've seen the other two. And so I need to go back and kind of watch the rest of those last two so I can maybe get more interested into Jason Bourne. But I mean, it's kind of weird because if I recall, Matt Damon said he was not going to do another Bourne movie.
Yes, correct.
So it's kind of weird. Did they just offer him more money or what?
Yeah.
What did it?
Okay, Aaron Cross. What did I say?
You said Alex Cross.
That's Cross,
a totally different character.
Yes, it is a totally different. Aaron Cross.
Yeah.
Okay. And they definitely cannot be related. But
no.
So, that one was sort of a different take and I thought that would have been a cool path to go down because it wasn't a character dealing with amnesia.
Yeah.
it was a guy who was struggling to, it looked at the medicine side of what these agents, what these operatives underwent. And it was a guy who was terrified to lose his brain capacity because the drugs had made him smart. They had made him physically incredible.
Yeah.
But he had he had like a 70 IQ before they started him on these meds, and he was just terrified of going back to how things were. And I don't know, maybe that story ran its course.
Probably. That sounds like something that should have tidied everything up just with one story and one plot. So that makes sense to me.
Right. Well, and they were not. I mean, you're right. They were not going to do another one with Matt Damon. He said no, and Paul Greengrass, the director, also said no. And in fact, they did an entirely different project together, which, in the media and everything, it tanked. I don't even remember the name of the movie. But
oh, yeah, I don't remember.
But it tanked, and the word around the industry was that, Universal let them do this to get another Jason Bourne out of him. And then he ended up saying no anyway, and then here we are. So this isn't based off any book or anything. And I'm a little worried because we've only seen the one trailer. So.
Yeah, that's a little weird because, like I said earlier, you usually get a couple. So, I don't know. To me, it looks like a fun little movie. I haven't seen Ultimatum or anything, so I don't even know where this is in the storyline or how everything works out. And
I mean, it definitely is a true sequel. The issue I had with Ultimatum was that it was kind of Bourne 2.5. Most of the movie actually takes place in between some scenes that happen in Bourne 2.
Oh, okay.
In the Bourne Supremacy. So yeah. I always felt like we were gypped out of the third movie anyway. Because it's really the last 15 or 20 minutes or so where it becomes the third Bourne movie. Like, it takes a totally different spin on what happens with Pamela Landy. There's this other character who's working in the office next to her trying to set her up while she's communicating with Jason Bourne. So the whole thing is like Bourne 2.5.
Well, so, maybe this one's a good thing. Maybe it's the true sequel, and we'll just tidy everything up.
All right. Well, here's to that then. Cheers. Cheers to that as I drink out of my clear liquid.
All right. I guess that's probably a good place to stop so that we could go ahead and get into Tarzan here. So let's take a quick break, and then we'll get into Legend of Tarzan. Having acclimated to life in London, is called back to his former home in the jungle to investigate the activities at a mining encampment.
At a mating encampment, where they force beautiful African people, because they're gorgeous, in this one especially, to mate.
This is absolutely terrible.
Wait a minute. Why would you want to free people from a mating encampment anyway? What sort of plot is this?
That would be a completely different movie.
Wow. That would be a screwball plot, and yet somehow more interesting than what we have going on, baby.
Oh, it's terrible.
What the hell are they doing with this mating encampment? I just like seeing people mate. That's why.
That's terrible.
I'm a German guy in that sort of era, and I enjoy watching people mate.
That's terrible. This movie's directed by David Yates, who is the lucky guy that got to do the last 4 Harry Potter movies and is going to do the next one coming up here. So he's been around for a while, but he's pretty much, that's all he did. All the other stuff, he was like a TV director. And then he got Harry Potter, so...
Is that any relationship to the Yates auto guy up there in Phoenix? Make it a Yates. That guy.
I remember those freaking commercials.
The guy, wasn't that the Tim Allen looking dude? God,
Yeah.
those commercials are awful. Guy looks just like Tim Allen. And they never address it.
Nope.
They never address it once. Damn him. I'll never buy a car from that place.
Oh, man. So he's starring Alexander Skarsgård as John Clayton / Tarzan. He was in Zoolander, Battleship, and The Giver. He has not been in a lot of stuff, yet it seems like you'd seen him in a lot of stuff, but he hasn't been in a lot of stuff. So it's just such a weird thing with this actor.
Yeah, he's got the qualities, right, of a leading guy.
Yeah, of a leading man. Yeah, so it's kind of weird.
Yeah, and he gets killed almost instantly in Battlefield.
Yes, or Battleship. Yeah.
Battleship.
Christoph Waltz is Leon Rahm. He was in The Green Hornet, The Three Musketeers, and Epic. Samuel L. Jackson is George Washington Williams. He was in Patriot Games, Die Hard with a Vengeance, and Unbreakable. Not that anybody doesn't know who the heck Samuel L. Jackson is.
All right, yeah, jeez. I mean, at one point when we did that video, there were like 50 movies that he had died in.
Yeah,
or something.
right? It's pretty bad. I am going to cut this extremely short, so I'm just going to say Margot Robbie as Jane Clayton. She was in The Wolf of Wall Street, Focus, and Whiskey Tango Foxtrot, and she's going to be, what's her name? Help me out here, Jones.
Harley Quinn.
Harley Quinn in the Suicide Squad movie.
Never going to get that voice right. So.
No, never going to get that voice right. You got anything else for these characters?
No, I don't.
All right, let's take a break and then we'll get into the quirks and likes. All right, Jones, we're back here with our quirks and likes section. Let's go ahead and get started with my quirks. The first quirk I have about this movie is in the trailer you see Tarzan doing this like model stance because he's a good-looking guy. But the thing is in the movie he does it like 100 times, where it's just a shot of him standing there, and it's an unnatural pose, and it just bothered the hell out of me through the whole movie. It's like from like a model standpoint where they're doing that little that little stance.
I don't know if I agree or know what you're referring to.
Oh, how could you not tell?
Well, because. To me, the entire time, he was really not acting like a human. Like, there isn't it, like, there's something about...
That's kind of my point, though. It's like everything about him seems unnatural.
Yeah, which, okay, now I guess I see what you're saying. And, yeah, I thought that's weird. That was one of my likes, so that's one of your quirks about it.
Really? How could you like that?
Well, because I thought it showed that he wasn't, like, there's just something about him the entire time.
Well, yeah.
He is not, just from, like, the way that he's always tilting his head and the way that he moves, like, he's not a regular dude.
Well, yeah, I get that point to it, but it's like, why the hell... I just feel like the way his attitude is about everything through this whole movie, about he's basically turned his back on Tarzan. And so I don't know what the time period is between him leaving the jungle and him being in London, but he's clearly acclimated himself. And so to me it seems like there would have been some sort of evolution with that. And the whole time I'm expecting him to, like, I like the quietness about him, and I like the awkwardness about him, but it's like really weird, and it's like uncomfortable. It's the whole time, and I don't even know. Like, maybe it's not even a quirk. Maybe it's just a quirk. I mean, it's just some weird little thing about him through this whole movie. My biggest issue, though, with saying that, is that because of how this movie is set up, I'm expecting his awkwardness to kind of come out, because it seems like the point of this movie is for him going back to being Tarzan. And I kind of expect him to basically become very animalistic towards the end of the movie. But that's not quite what you get. He doesn't really go that far. So even though he's got this quietness about him and this awkwardness about him because he's not a normal guy, it's like I'm expecting at the end of the movie for him to unleash the beast, and he just doesn't. Does that make any sense?
I mean, it does and it doesn't. I think the bigger issue is because I think it's a bit of a slower burn with far too much John Clayton. This wasn't an origin story, which I think is an interesting thing that I'd like to talk about later.
Yeah.
It kind of is something in the middle of two different things entirely, where he's this other guy and like the origin is sort of told through flashbacks, but it isn't really talked about. There's like a diary a little bit. It's set up a different way. So I like that we weren't seeing an origin story, and I think that in itself is a little bit quirky.
Yeah, it is.
And so I think I get what you're saying. I think the issue for me is that we see so much of him as John Clayton. And like the real subtle thing in his performance and about the character is that he's fighting who he once was. Like he doesn't want to be that anymore.
That's exactly my point to this, though. Because he never really goes back, even though he goes back.
And stays, right?
Yeah, but he's not Tarzan at the end of the movie, though.
Right, and I would argue that he isn't Tarzan at any point in the movie.
Well, that's
other than when he absolutely needs it.
I mean, and that's exactly my point to this. It's like you have this slow burn with this movie, and you have this weirdness about this character, yet you don't grow with that over time, and neither does he. It's like, it's such a weird thing. It's like he's fighting the urge to be there, and you're expecting that urge to overcome, and then he's Tarzan by the end of the movie. But he never really is Tarzan. He's just this awkward character the whole time. And it's just, like, it's weird. I don't understand why they chose to go that direction. I was expecting, at the end of the movie, for him to really just be Tarzan. Because to me, I guess this may or may not be fair to this movie, but the way I looked at it is really similar to the RoboCop remake. You remember RoboCop?
Yeah.
We both went to go see that one. The original one was basically about a man turning into a robot and getting basically at the very beginning of the movie he gets injured and he becomes a robot, and then he's getting more in touch with his humanity throughout that movie. But when you watch the new one, it's the other way around. It's like the guy, he's a man for most of the movie, and he's like coming to terms that he's being turned into a robot. And to me, this is how it feels with this movie. It's like you don't see the origin where he goes from the kid all the way up to becoming Tarzan, and he's Tarzan the whole time. Instead, you get, well, he's no longer Tarzan, and then he's kind of forced to come back and then be Tarzan, yet he'd never become Tarzan. And to me, that's a huge problem with this movie. Does that make any sense?
Yes. Well, yeah, but I think the issue is, yeah, I mean, you're right on the money. There's too much talking, and there isn't enough time as him actually being Tarzan. Like there's a lot of talking from other characters when the movie is called The Legend of Tarzan, and you would think it should be about him.
Or and even if it's...
But he might have like the fewest lines out of the four main characters.
Yeah, of course he does. But even then, it's like, well, if they're going to use all these other characters, I feel like they should use them as a build-up because it's called The Legend of Tarzan. Like you're saying, I'm okay with other characters talking about The Legend of Tarzan, and then us getting him overcoming his John Clayton III, which we get a lot of, and him being Tarzan. Because it's like there's this build-up of his weirdness as a character. There's other people talking about him, but they're not talking about him as if he's a legend. There's a few scenes like that in the movie, but I'm okay if they continue to do that, and then we get Tarzan at the end, but that's not what we get. So it's just kind of weird.
I don't disagree with anything you're saying. I mean, I think that is a core issue with this movie, and it may have just been that, you know, they sat around thinking like, well, we can't just have a guy in a loincloth, right, running around for 2 hours, and it be watchable, and so maybe this is why they went with that approach. And, you know, the more we talk about it, the more I just keep thinking of George of the Jungle, which is probably what the movie would have started seeming like had they gone that route.
Okay.
You know, like they tried to, I don't know, make him relatable, but how relatable can a guy be who grows up in the jungle? Yeah. And then is all of a sudden like living this lavish lifestyle, which he hates. You know?
Yeah. He definitely hates it.
Kinda...
But it's just... Everything that you're saying is exactly like my point that I have. It's like... I feel like we should have gotten Tarzan. I feel like that should have been the climax of the movie, is that you get Tarzan. And you just don't. And I don't...
I mean, they set up one thing with him being able to talk with animals.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And there's one scene with him swinging on vines and stuff, which I was going to talk about in a little bit.
Yeah.
So it's kind of shades of Tarzan, and you know, maybe legend is sort of the wrong title, other than people always exaggerate things that are legends.
Yes.
And, you know, and to find out that he's just a man, but that isn't really the point that they're making.
No, that's actually the opposite that they're trying to make.
Right. Maybe if that's what they did do, you know, that would have been better. Like, if that's really what it was about, that, hey, you know, he is still a guy.
But that's not...
It's just that isn't what they say at the end of the movie.
That's not what they say, and that's not the buildup of the movie, though. That's completely opposite of what they were trying to do.
It's a different lesson. It's almost what they could have said, and maybe we would have been having a different discussion. That's one very... I think that's like 2 or 3 different quirky things that you mashed together.
Well, yeah, pretty much.
Into a bigger...
And along with my attitude with them constantly, I really hate them constantly, just a shot of him standing there doing nothing. There's a lot of that that really ticks me off. But it is what it is. The last thing I have, which is another just kind of weird quirk thing, is like when we were talking about the trailer, we were trying to figure out how Samuel L. Jackson is a part of this movie.
Right. Okay.
Into this movie. And so one of the comments you made is you were like, well, I think he's like a rehash of one of his other characters that he's already been a part of, right? Well,
yeah.
And we're thinking, well, maybe this time it's a little different, because the way the trailer is, you're thinking that they're going to be like friends and maybe it's a different character, but it ends up being like another, like, it's Samuel L. Jackson. There is no other, it's just how he is in this movie, and it's just kind of a funny thing, because I was thinking about that the entire time I was watching the movie, where you're talking about, I think this is just going to be a rehash of one of his other characters, and it, you know, and it kind of is, so... That's the last thing I have, man. What do you have for your quirks?
You know, I think the big thing, one of the big things which really stood out to me and was really annoying the entire time, was that they've got Margot Robbie there, Jane Clayton.
Yeah.
And she's tied up throughout the whole thing.
Yes, she is.
And she's chained up in a humid climate, and even though she doesn't have any makeup on, like, she should look like a disaster.
Yeah.
And I don't know, they have her for days, they're trekking her through the jungle, and she still looks really good. And I find it suspiciously weird that she looks that hot.
Wow.
There was another thing too, and I swear there was like this selective tisk or something from the audience. And I don't know if it came from behind me, but there's a scene where this poor African village, like, not only do they kill their chieftain and then take the males to be enslaved,
yes,
but they go, for good measure, they go ahead and set their fucking homes on fire.
Oh,
I don't
yeah,
care.
I know,
I'm dropping
right?
the F-bomb there. So they do that, and then, like, in the very next scene, or one of the next scenes, you know, cute little Margot Robbie, who's looking too good to be in that climate,
yeah,
is unchained and treated to this dinner. And I'm thinking, like, these people have just lost everything, and then there's this scene. It just seems so, I don't know, like, the justice there, like, it totally took me out of the movie. I was like, God, just edit it differently. And I know that it couldn't have been the same thing because they took her from that village.
Yeah, right.
But there was just something about it, like, people who had so little,
yeah,
all of a sudden lost, like, just about everything that they had.
Yep.
And then she's fine. And technically, there comes a point where you don't need her at all. You know,
Yes.
he continued, like, the whole reason they had her was to lure him over to this enemy chieftain.
Yes.
And at that point, he could have just put a bullet in her.
Yeah.
Like I
Could've
don't
just killed
understand
her.
why he took her further
Well,
with him.
that's one of those things that just
One of those Hollywood things.
yeah, that's
right?
a Hollywood thing that just happens all the time.
Doesn't
in
make any
movies.
sense.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense, and it happens in a lot of movies where the hostage loses their I don't know, like you don't need them anymore, like you were saying, and so then it's best just to get rid of them because it's more hassle than it's worth. So you'd think you'd just off them, but that doesn't usually happen. But that's just on, you know, a list of things when we do our movie together that we'll make sure that they'll just kill a hostage
Right.
and see how the audience reacts to that.
We'll just have the bad guys win. like
have the
the
bad
original
guys
ending
win.
of Dodgeball, which just would have pissed everyone off.
It would have pissed everybody off, exactly.
And that's how it was. That's how the first test screening saw it, and
Yep.
that audience flipped out. To the point where the studio said change this ending, and the director wanted to walk
Yep.
over it because
Yep.
Vince Vaughn and Ben Stiller were all on board.
Yep.
So there's a little story that I don't know if we told.
Well, we
Before,
haven't, and that's the reason why the title of the movie is Dodgeball, a true underdog story. Because
that title.
that happens to underdogs. They lose. That happens more often than anything else. When you're an underdog, you freaking lose, and that's just how it is.
Yeah, there wasn't that originally. There wasn't that standoff. There's, and in fact, you can almost feel it in the movie because that referee comes whistling in, and
Yeah.
there's almost like a weird cut, and that is because the movie ended with him getting hit, and
Yep.
Ben Stiller, like, and his team, the Vipers or whatever,
Yep.
are just like celebrating, and they're just laughing in their faces, and that was it. That is how the test screen. That is how the movie ended. So that weird cut you see where the referee all of a sudden comes running in.
Yep.
From a totally different camera angle. It's like, your foot was on the line. Sudden death. It's like, oh no. You know, that's none of that. Like, that's a clear,
Yeah.
like, that's a pretty good Band-Aid, but it's still a Band-Aid. You know,
Yep.
it may look tan colored, but we know what it is. We know you guys cut your finger.
Nice.
Okay, so the plot to me was convoluted, incredibly so. You know, you've got these blood diamonds
Yep.
and slavery rolled into a fic about a guy who was once called Tarzan.
Yep.
And I'm just, you know, like, that to me isn't fun. I mean, you're dealing with issues that are not fun in a movie called Tarzan. And when I think of Tarzan, I think of there being some fun. And I mean, those are really serious
The
issues.
thing is there's nothing about this movie at all that shows that they were trying to make a fun Tarzan movie. That just doesn't exist in this movie.
Right. Well,
they clearly were not trying to do that.
With the exception, which out of nowhere, all of a sudden, with him and Sam Jackson's character, there are like some funny scenes. Yes. I'm like, why isn't there more of this? Well, with him in there,
I would venture to say that because of the way the movie is, there should have been less of that.
Okay. Well, that's a very interesting point. Because of the tone of the movie, yes. It doesn't make sense. No. But that whole, that whole ball kissing joke,
so ridiculous.
which is one of my likes. I just was laughing hysterically, almost to the point where I thought I was going to leave the theater.
Even belong in the movie at all. It just doesn't belong in the freaking movie. Oh man! All right, what else you got?
Let's see. We've got. I really had a problem with some of the visuals in this movie.
Yeah. There is one scene that really ticked me off significantly.
Ooh, let's see. Can I guess what that scene is?
Okay.
Is it the scene?
Let's go ahead. What do you got?
Okay. Well, because there were a handful of them.
Yeah, which one?
Is it the scene with Samuel L. Jackson running with the herd?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, I had a 1 in 3 shot at it, I figured.
Yep. Well, the funny part is a lot of those scenes are with Samuel L. Jackson.
Yes, they are. So there's a scene in this movie where he's running alongside a herd.
Yes.
And not only is he not even running outside or in a real environment,
yes,
but it is just such a terrible compositing job.
Yes, and then
it looks like something out of a different era.
Yeah, and then there's another shot of him running. It's before they jump onto the train, and there's that scene that's clearly like the set that they built for them to run on. Does not look like the jungle that was created. And I'm like, what is going on with these guys? What is their problem with this? I mean, that was a pretty good technical problem in this movie with some scenes. So
yeah, and it's a letdown because I thought they did a really good job with the apes, but then
right.
They're,
really all the animals I thought they did a really good job with.
Yes, I think they did a spectacular job with the animals, with the exception of the herd at the very end of the movie. Yes. Which I thought did not look right. I thought the gators and the sinking boat didn't look right.
Yeah.
Either. So basically this movie suffers from one of our least favorite things, and that's green screen hell.
Yeah, green screen hell.
Where they are, where they needed to go practical with some of that stuff.
Yes.
And then aid it with CG.
Yes.
Instead of doing a total studio shoot.
Yes. You're right.
So they go overboard with that. The other thing that you've touched on, so I guess this will just be my last thing, is really Tarzan isn't Tarzan in this movie.
No, he's not.
And I think that kind of sums it up.
Yeah, pretty much. All right, so let's get into the likes then, and sweet. I have a few.
All right.
They're not. They're not really. They're not really great likes, but I thought some of the scenes with the vine swinging was kind of cool. There's some really cool shots with that throughout the movie, I think. Regardless of how sometimes the effect just didn't look right, the way it was shot, I thought was pretty cool. Like the way they did it.
I mean, they have these vines that will go on forever.
Yes.
And that's sort of always been a cheat with Tarzan, but I think it was much more glaring here.
It was.
So.
Which is kind of one of those things. But I thought my point to them is that the way that the vine swinging scenes were shot is how I liked it. I thought that obviously the vine problem is a thing, and even just the visuals in general are a problem with those scenes. You had touched on this earlier, and I thought that the way they did the backstory with the flashbacks was done pretty well. I like how we didn't get the origin story that we normally get, so this is something that they did differently. They decided to use flashbacks instead of let's retell this story again, because the main story, in my opinion, is about John Clayton III going back to Tarzan, even though we didn't get that.
I mean, it kind of reminded me of the movie Hook.
Okay.
You know, I mean, can you sort of see it? It's just, I mean, he put on you know, I mean, I don't know, the parallels are pretty damn close.
Yeah, they're pretty close, because it's, you know, in Hook, Peter Pan, you know, he leaves to be with Wendy, and so he ends up having his own kids and having his other stuff, and then he ends up coming back and he has to become Peter Pan again to take on Captain Hook. And so you're correct in that, and maybe that's why, maybe that makes this movie worse, because there's a reference they could have did to try to fix the problems in Hook, because Hook's got some issues. But I don't know. It's just kind of one of those things. I definitely think the parallels are pretty similar. I think that's a good example. I didn't think of it that way. I always thought of it like RoboCop. The only other thing I have to say about this one is, although she spends an entire time of the movie chained up, I feel like she wasn't completely the damsel in distress in this movie. She even gets away at one point in time. And there's something about that we always see with these movies, where you get the damsel in distress, and she really wasn't so much like that. And she was definitely a freaking hassle while she was captured. Like, she was a pain in the ass, and she was trying to get away. Yeah. She was trying to take freaking Christoph Waltz out, you know, kind of things. Like, so I like that aspect to it. And I even enjoyed how he saves Jane at the end. It's not this huge emotional scene because now Tarzan has saved Jane. He grabs her and hands her off to Samuel L. Jackson and finishes the movie out. So you don't get that whole full-on damsel thing in this movie, and I feel like that was something they did pretty well. And that's all I have, man.
Well, that's a really good point, which I kind of forgot about, because we did mention that when we were talking about the trailer.
Yes.
You know, personally, I thought Alexander Skarsgård was the best part of the movie. You know, I liked his performance. I liked that there was something off about him. You know, like he was the boy raised by wolves, or, you know, raised by apes. Yeah, in this case. Yeah. I mean, you know how that sort of story is, and you know, I thought that factor, like that sort of wild factor, was cool about him. I just think there wasn't enough. You know, I really enjoyed seeing him sort of back in his element. Yeah. And I think we didn't get to that soon enough.
Yeah, I don't think we got to
it. Maybe we didn't stay there soon enough either.
Yeah, I don't think we got there soon enough. I don't think we stayed there soon enough. And then, like I said earlier, I don't think the payoff of his performance you get either. Like, I feel like he's just the same from the beginning of the movie all the way to the end of the movie. He's the exact same character, even though I feel like the movie is him coming back to being the wild man. But he wasn't the wild man at the end of the movie. He was still this weird John Clayton III who's been who was Tarzan.
He was there. He you know, I guess left his title or whatever. I mean, he did not want to be called Tarzan at the beginning of the movie, for sure.
No, he did not.
So, but is that enough of a?
It's just you don't
switch?
Get the.
No, it isn't.
You don't get the payoff. Even the way that Christoph Waltz gets taken out is not Tarzan. Like, it's like, where are we getting, like, the beast aspect to him, the wild man? Where are you getting that with him? You don't get that with him. As a matter of fact, a lot of the times when you finally get kind of the wild man attitude to him is when he faces off with his former brother who's an ape, and he just gets his butt kicked. which is fine because it's an ape, but still.
It's an ape, right.
Yeah, but the thing is like, why don't we get that kind of animosity at the end of this movie with Christoph Waltz? I was expecting him to just beat the living crap out of the guy, and that's just not what happened. He just kind of sort of strangles him a little bit, and then the thing, he breaks through the climax to the movie is when he breaks the necklace that's around his neck with just his neck, and then he calls the alligators or the crocodiles, whatever, over to take him out. But you don't really I still didn't get Tarzan taking somebody out kind of thing, like Unleash the Wild Man. And that's just what I was expecting, and that's just not what I got. So I just thought that was just, I don't know, I had problems with that aspect.
Yeah, I thought some of the visuals were really good with the animals, and then...
Yeah, they were.
It got to a point where they were pushing it. They stuck something pretty daunting in the script, which is a herd runs through a town, and obviously you cannot do that in this day and age with animals.
No,
you're not. There's no way a studio is going to be able to get away with that, which is why they're using the CG ones.
Yeah,
but I think the shots were just too. It just was also canned towards the end of the movie, where it obviously had to be like this. But then they weren't even on site somewhere.
Yeah.
It was clearly a studio shoot at that point.
Yeah.
So, monetarily, I understand where they probably were when, they made that choice to film it that way.
Yeah.
But I think it just looked really cheesy. And I think the movie needed more scenes between Tarzan and Samuel L. Jackson. I think the issue was that the movie was so serious the entire time that I think it needed those lighter notes. I think it needed more of them.
I think they should have just dropped them entirely and just kept the movie serious if that was the direction they were choosing to go in. Because it seems that way to me. It seems like there's so many scenes because of all the really... the plot is not light. It's heavy. It has some heavy themes going on throughout this movie, and it's just, I feel like just leaving those out probably would have made the movie a little better, and having a relationship somehow between Samuel Jackson and Tarzan would have been nice, even if it wasn't lighthearted, because it almost seems like they wanted them to be friends, but at the very beginning, he's just such a dick to Samuel L. Jackson at the beginning of this movie. And even by the end, they still don't see you have the friendship hug at the end, but you don't really see that evolution over the course of this journey that they've become friends.
Well, I don't know. He does go with him when he could have not gone.
Yeah, but it just doesn't but there's no build up to that. Through the whole movie, there's no there's a mutual respect going on here that's growing into now we're good friends because of what we just went through. That doesn't happen in this movie.
Mm.
And it's just, it's what I was hoping would happen, but that's not what happens. So, you got anything else, man?
No, that's it for me.
All right, so let's go ahead and rate this sucker. So, I want to say that I think it was an interesting take on Tarzan. I thought they did a good job with kind of telling the backstory. I thought some of the visuals were pretty good, and I just think I also like how they did Jane, but I think that overall I really didn't gain anything from this movie, so I'm just gonna say rent it.
Yeah, I'm also going to say rent it for a really superficial reason.
All right.
I think that it's actually a pretty good date night type of thing because of how the story works out, and because you've got, a really, you got Alexander Skarsgård, who's in really good shape.
Yeah,
and there's there's eye candy for women and for men.
Yeah.
In this movie, so I think it hits one of those date night rental type.
I can see that date night
nights.
rental.
Yeah,
It's not terrible. It's not great.
Right.
It's enough to keep your attention. Enough to keep your
enough
attention.
to keep your attention.
So,
sure. and if you you're texting your buddy and you're like, oh, hey, my chick's here, whatever, leave me alone.
it's I can
order
totally see
pizza
that.
And put on your stretchy pants.
And it's also because it's not great and you don't really get a lot from it. If you're on your date night and you guys don't want to continue watching it, it's really not that big of a deal. So,
Right.
So that's just, I guess, Half Past Podcast is just gonna say Reddit.
Reddit. Yep.
All right, let's go ahead and end this thing. So if anybody wants to contact us, you can always contact us on our home on the web, halfpastpodcast.com. You can like us on Facebook. You can rate us on iTunes and Google Play. We're on Stitcher and Libsyn, and you can always email us at halfpastcast@gmail.com. That's halfpastcast@gmail.com. And I'd just like to thank everybody for listening, and thanks for your support. And this weekend, we got Secret Life of Pets, right?
Ooh, yeah, that's right up my alley, weirdly, right now. So.
Yes, it is, right? You got some new dogs over there.
Yeah, they napped the whole time, so it worked out.
Oh, that works. Oh, yeah, you can also tweet us at Half Past Podcast.
Ah, you forgot one.
I did forget one.
Tweet us.
Oh, man. There's nothing else, Joes? We're getting out of here? Let's get the heck out of here.
I want to turn my AC back on. Oh, sorry for that part in the middle where I think my AC was going. That's why I sound funny all of a sudden.
Real nice.
I don't think I said that much anyway.
This is the Half Past Podcast. I'm Graham Ricks.
Jonesy. A little late.
See you next flick.